Rachel Zegler, being 23 or whatever she is, like so many kids raised on TikTok, she's all for infantada is the only global solution. So the two stars hate each other.
Rachel Zegler completely loses it as theaters cruelly remove Snow White after being slammed with brutal reviews. Just when we thought this movie couldn't crash any harder, bam! Theaters have officially started pulling Snow White from their screens. And Rachel Zegler? She's not taking it well. In fact, she's gone from Hollywood starlet to full-on breakdown mode in a matter of hours. In a now viral video,
please.
For which movie?
shot from what looks like her own bedroom, Rachel stares into the camera with a mix of anger, heartbreak, and desperation. Her voice trembles as she delivers what was clearly supposed to be an emotional monologue. But instead of gaining sympathy, she set the internet on fire again, with some calling it dramatic, others calling it delusional.
I think it's fair to say that no one on the right side of America can stand the star of this movie, and yet, Christian, you've seen the movie.
Within minutes, TikTok was flooded with edits, stitches, and reactions. People mocked her speech, turned her quotes into memes, and even dragged winged victory into it. Over on X, the hashtag #snowflop started trending again. And just like that, Rachel's emotional attempt at reclaiming her story turned into another viral disaster. So, what did Rachel say that sparked another wave of backlash? And how did Snow White officially turn into Disney's biggest flop yet? Let's dive right into this wild meltdown.
What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
It all started when Disney decided to remake one of its most beloved classics, Snow White, hoping for another blockbuster hit. But instead of capturing hearts, it sparked online chaos. From the moment Rachel Zegler was cast in the lead role, controversy followed her like a shadow. The remake, with its massive $250 million budget, barely scraped together $43 million in its opening weekend in the US. A shocking number that set off alarms across the industry. Even overseas, where Disney often finds refuge, the movie pulled in only $44.3 million, bringing the total to a disappointing $87.3 million globally. It was nowhere near what the studio had anticipated, and the reaction from audiences and critics was brutal.
But imagine you spend $250 million and you get some young girl and you don't kind of talk to her about like, hey, you know, don't get political, you're young, and I know you have opinions about things, but should be just about the movie.
The backlash didn't come out of nowhere. Rachel Zegler's previous comments about the original 1937 Snow White resurfaced and painted her as someone who didn't even respect the source material. She had openly mocked the romantic storyline, calling it weird, and criticized the prince's role, labeling him as a stalker. For many fans, these statements felt like a slap in the face. They weren't just annoyed, they were angry. To them, Zegler wasn't just portraying a character, she was rewriting the entire identity of a timeless fairy tale, and not in a way that resonated.
Someone who looks like them, someone who represents a dreamer, no matter what they look like or where they come from. The true meaning of fair is the kindness within, and that's the point of our film.
Social media became the battlefield. Clips from old interviews popped up everywhere. In one, Zegler confidently stated that people would line up to see her movies, something that aged poorly when images of nearly empty theaters flooded the internet. Critics and audiences didn't hold back. Hashtags like #snowflop and #NotMySnowWhite trended for days. What could have been a modern twist on a classic ended up being seen as a tone-deaf and self-indulgent project. The criticism wasn't just about the story or performance, it had become personal. People questioned whether Zegler was the right choice for the role at all, with some calling her one of the most out-of-touch figures in Hollywood.
The message of the movie is to be that bitch. That's the message that they wrote a script that's telling girls, I don't need nobody tells me, I'm a 20-year-old girl, so obviously I should run my mouth all the time.
The film itself didn't help her case. Instead of drawing viewers into a magical world, It introduced a version of Snow White that few could connect with. In this retelling, Snow White didn't get her name from her fair skin, but from surviving a snowstorm, an odd reimagining that many found forced. The kingdom she ruled over wasn't a charming fairy tale land, but a utopian, communism-inspired society where everyone shared resources equally. Audiences weren't expecting a political story when they walked into a Disney movie. They wanted magic, nostalgia, and maybe a bit of romance. What they got felt like a lecture. Rachel's insistence on removing the prince from the storyline and shifting the focus to Snow White becoming a leader might have worked if the execution had been stronger, but it came across as trying too hard to be modern at the cost of charm. Even when she argued for fair pay and talked about how exhausting it was to be on set in costume for long hours, people weren't sympathetic. Instead of seeing a hard-working actress, they saw someone ungrateful for an opportunity many would dream of. Her words didn't land the way she intended, and the internet rarely gives second chances.
White is running for president.
I'm launching my campaign. I am.
It wasn't just the online crowd that noticed. Industry insiders and analysts were shocked by the numbers. For a brand like Disney, famous for dominating box offices, this kind of opening was unthinkable. Even The Little Mermaid, which faced its own share of backlash, made over $90 million in its first weekend. By contrast, Snow White's week debut had theaters scrambling. Some cinemas reduced showings, others replaced the film entirely. For a movie with such a legacy, it was a staggering fall from grace. Then came the awards season, where Rachel made an appearance at the Oscars with co-star Gal Gadot. Instead of damage control, it only added fuel to the fire. The two actresses walked the red carpet, but their body language told a different story. Gal looked distant, cold even. She barely interacted with Rachel, and the awkward tension was impossible to ignore. Viewers quickly noticed the chilly vibe and started speculating about what went wrong. Gossip pages and body language experts had a field day. It became clear that even behind the scenes, not everything was sunshine and sparkle. What made it worse was that while Rachel's reputation took hit after hit, Gal Gadot remained mostly untouched. She continued to book roles, endorse brands, and walk red carpets without the cloud that now seemed to hover permanently over Rachel's head. Insiders claimed Gal was contractually obligated to promote Snow White, but was doing the bare minimum, clearly distancing herself from the chaos. And honestly, who could blame her?
And then they couldn't put dwarfs because this is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive. You'd think the most progressive thing would be get people jobs.
Even Bill Maher went off about the mess around Disney's Snow White remake. He joked about Rachel Zegler, saying she's 23, and like many young people raised on TikTok, she has extreme opinions. Then he talked about how the two stars don't even like each other, and how Disney couldn't use dwarfs in the movie. Maher pointed out how funny it is that progressives, who always talk about helping people, ended up taking jobs away from dwarfs. He said this movie was a perfect chance to give work to actors with dwarfism, since there aren't many roles like this, especially with 7 parts. But because Peter Dinklage called it offensive, Disney backed off, even though many dwarfs just wanted the job.
The most progressive thing would be get people jobs, and dwarfs want to work.
This is like a golden employment opportunity for dwarves.
There's not that many scripts that come down the pike.
The online narrative was set. Rachel Zegler, once seen as a rising star after her breakout in West Side Story, was now branded as Hollywood's latest cautionary tale. Audiences weren't just criticizing the movie, they were criticizing her. Every statement she made, every public appearance, was scrutinized under a magnifying glass. Her attempts at defending herself often backfired, and while Disney tried its best to steer the ship back on course, the damage was done. The studio's marketing efforts couldn't fix what had already occurred,